Girls still want to have fun, but they also want funds, equal pay, and control over their bodies. Just fundamental rights, Maria.
Yes, thanks to Cindy Lauper.
Yeah, as you write in this week's Flipside column. Welcome to the column. 50 years since New Zealand passed the Equal Pay Act, abolishing gender-based pay scales in the private sector. What's changed?
I was quite amazed, actually, that it's 50 years. It'll be 50 years this October. And, I was alive 50 years ago. And so it just stuns me that it's sort of really been within one or two generations that we have addressed these issues. And a lot has changed, but a lot hasn't. We still have quite a healthy gender pay gap. The Statistics New Zealand figure is just over 9%. But a lot of other studies which measure it in different ways, taking into account things like bonuses, measure it at much greater than that. And certainly some of the companies that are reporting on it, like Westpac, for example, have found that theirs is it's reducing, but it's still up around 30%.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's pretty good.
And that Mind the Gap platform launched earlier this year, from memory?
Yes, they launched last year, and in March they launched their platform, which allows companies to report their gender pay gap data. And so far, about 55 companies have, some of the big names like AIA Insurance and, well-known names. But they estimate there's about 5,000 companies that would qualify for this. So this is companies with employees of, staff of more than 50. And so they're not rushing to do this. And the other frustration by the movement is that the government also doesn't appear to be rushing to address pay transparency kinds of measures.
Because this is the thing, right? We're quite far behind international standards on this stuff as well, right?
Yes, we are. A lot of the countries that we'd like to compare ourselves to, like Australia, the UK, Spain, they do have systems of varying kinds and varying levels of efficiency as well. But we have nothing really apart from the public services required to report their gender pay gap. But in the private sector, nothing at all. And so you can't really manage what you're not reporting, is the argument. And the Human Rights Commission is on the bandwagon of this as well, and they delivered a petition to Parliament earlier this year calling for action. And the government says it's committed to it, but it has not committed to any kind of time frame. It's really keeping it vague on when it might actually address the issue, so it's pretty slow pace.
That's helpful, isn't it? Have they introduced any sort of gender pay initiatives or anything like this?
Well, they did pass a law in 2020 following the historic battle that was led by Christine Bartlett, the rest home worker that fought for equal pay in that sector. And that piece of legislation allows people to fight for equal pay for work of equal value, effectively going through a bargaining type of system as opposed to going to the courts, which is what Christine Bartlett had to do. So that is great. We do have that piece of legislation. But frustratingly, on the flip side, the law that was passed in 2017 allowing the pay settlement for care workers was due to expire on July the 1st. The government had 5 years warning, despite repeated attempts by the unions to try and sort of progress that. They didn't do anything until a last minute piece of legislation passed just a few weeks ago, which has delivered them 3%. And so they are now ironically going to have to use that 2020 law to seek a pay equity settlement and further their cause. So, yeah, it's been a bit one step forward, one step back.
So Mind the Gap has written this open letter to the government demanding, or imploring that they make pay gap reporting mandatory. What's your view? Is that the best step forward, do you think?
Look, I just looked at my own experience. As I say, I was a very small girl when equal pay came in, and I went to secondary school in the 80s, and certainly at my single-sex school there was no question that we were encouraged to become architects or engineers, not journalists, funnily enough, but anyway, it's another story. So the idea of a career was always there, but no one ever said to you could run anything. And I look at some of the guys that I was at university with who are now CEOs, professional directors. These are paths that I just never thought of. And so this is part of gender pay equity. It's not so much work for, a director might be getting paid the same whether they're male or female, but it's whether they ever thought of, going into those lines of work. And so within organisations like Westpac, it's very heavily weighted at the top towards men who are earning more in those roles. So yes, I think you need to cast sunlight on it to show the true extent of the gap and make people aware that we do need to encourage girls to go into higher paying roles and to fight for equity in traditional caring roles that are not paid as highly still as traditional male roles.
What gets measured gets done, eh?
That I think is the answer.
That's this week's Flip Side. Maria, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.